to meet global standards. Secondly, creating independent bodies to investigate disclosures. Lastly, but not least important, providing real support, both financial and psychosocial, to whistleblowers. Protecting whistleblowers is protecting our democracy.
In South Africa's Umkhonto we Sizwe party has expressed its dismay with the slow pace at which Parliament's ad hoc committee is functioning. The committee was established to look into threats of national security following allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi of serious corruption in the criminal justice system. The ad hoc committee had a deadline of the end of October to report back to the National Assembly. So far, the committee has had 3 meetings, 2 of which were held to thrash out its terms of reference. MK Party MP David Skhosana says it is regrettable that things are moving slowly.
The other committee as well has been delayed. We're supposed to start yesterday on the 1st, but unfortunately the technical team are busy, we are told, with witnesses, to get dates. But indeed, this shows serious incompetency from the commencement itself. And I think we can do better than that. As Umkhonto we Sizwe party, we are very, very concerned that, the Judicial Commission as well as the committee was supposed to have started on the 1st.
And South Africa's Chief Justice Mandisa Maya says that the training of judicial officers in the ever-evolving issue of environmental science is no longer optional but imperative. Maya was addressing delegates from G20 countries at the J20 summit taking place in Sandton. She says that the stakes for the world's ecosystems, communities and future generations are high. Maya says that the successful implementation of the law depends on judiciary that is abreast of climate change science and policy.
Climate justice demands transnational legal dialogue, the sharing of jurisprudence, and perhaps even joint frameworks for accountability and enforcement. This session, therefore, is essential, not as a theoretical exercise, but as a space to equip our cause to act, to innovate, and to reinforce one another. As the climate crisis deepens, so must our resolve as jurists to deliver climate justice fairly, boldly, and collaboratively.
And witnesses in part of Gaza City say the Israeli army has dropped incendiary bombs as it continues its offensive to control the entire city. In recent weeks, Israeli forces have advanced from Gaza City's outer suburbs and are now just a few kilometers from the city center, despite international calls to halt the offensive. The BBC's Yolandi Nell has the details.
Videos show fires after residents said Israeli quadcopter drones dropped incendiary bombs in Sheikh Radwan in northern Gaza City. The UN's humanitarian office says that in the past 2 weeks, more than 76,000 new displacements have been recorded across the city, where a famine has been declared. Most people moved towards the crowded coast. Only 1/3 left for southern Gaza, as the Israeli military is instructed. In Al-Mawasi in the south, which Israel has declared a humanitarian zone, a number of people, including several children, were killed while queuing for water on Tuesday.
A recap of your top story. Former Congo Justice Minister Constant Mutamba is convicted of embezzling millions for prison construction and sentenced to forced labour, causing protest and postponed of a verdict due to clashes. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapala Mahabe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, some minimum salaries for players in the top tier 2 professional leagues of women's football in England will be introduced this season, while the South African Rugby Union officially become the 6th shareholder of the United Rugby Championship. Details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
It is a very good afternoon to you, Kenya. Good afternoon, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Eritrea, Kenya. Good afternoon to you, DRC. Good afternoon, Somalia, Ethiopia. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Tami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. This afternoon, we look at Kenya's PMI, the performance of sectors such as manufacturing, the services sector, agriculture, construction, as well as the wholesale and retail sectors. Also, a new airline loading for Namibia. It's gone 6 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Welcome to it. Just a reminder that you're most welcome to interact with us on the various social media platforms. On X, Instagram and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. And actually, particularly if you are in Namibia, do you think that a new airline is what you need, or would you rather have a revving up of the defunct Air Namibia? What are your preferences? Looking forward to your responses, as well as if you are in Kenya, how you have seen the PMI affecting your day to day, as well as your businesses. That conversation with Christopher Legedisho, an economist at Standard Bank in Kenya, coming up this afternoon.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We begin here this afternoon. The 6th edition of the Angola Oil and Gas Conference is currently underway in Luanda, where President João Lourenço, in his opening address, emphasized the country's push to diversify its energy sector. He stressed that Angolans, especially the youth, must be at the center of this transformation as they represent the future of the industry. Channel Africa's economics reporter, Innocent Semosa, has more from Angola.
The conference comes as Angola celebrates 50 years of independence, a milestone that President João Lourenço says highlights the vital role of oil and gas, not only in driving the economy, but also in lifting homes and improving lives.
Queremos parcerias que contribuam para o bem comum, para o empoderamento.
We want partnerships that contribute to the common good, to the empowerment of our communities, and to the sustainable development of the country. Cooperation between the public and private sectors, between investors and regulators, combined with local knowledge and international experience, will be decisive in realizing these aspirations.
African Energy Chamber Executive Chairperson NJ Ayuk reflected on Angola at 50, highlighting the country's energy reforms and their role in shaping the future of its oil and gas sector.
Over the last years, my Angola at 50 has been an Angola of reforms. Reforms that transcend not just the economy, but the people. Reforms that made us proud, and reforms that made companies that left to continue believing again. Reform that made its people to decide that we can be part of this match, and we can match on, and we can be those people that drive a new generation that drives the country forward for another 50 years. With those reforms, we saw taxes being reduced. We saw better fiscal terms. We encourage companies to drill. Those three words are coming, not yet now.
Also addressing delegates, Chief Executive Officer at Eni, Claudio Del Cazi, whose company has operated in Angola for 4 decades, announced a $5 billion of investment in the next 4 years to boost the country's oil and gas sector.
Azule Energy recent Gagageira discovery, the first dedicated gas exploration well drilled in Angola, will make even more resources available for the country's growth and prosperity, and also diversification of gas utilization, as we discussed yesterday with the minister. Angola is poised to become a leader in the energy sector. To seize this moment, long-term vision and sustainability are essential. Any strategy in Angola reflects this as we expand our portfolio, pursuing diversification and focus on creating long-lasting value.
Meanwhile, Moray Achinlos, Chief Executive Officer of BP, thanked the government of Angola for creating a conducive environment for them to operate.
Now, behind every job, every barrel, every project is partnership. So next I want to thank the many friends and partners who have helped shape Azul's success. First and foremost, our partners in government. We like working with the government of Angola because you make things work. You create the environment that gets kit on the seabed and cranes in the sky. And we especially appreciate the flexibility that allows us to develop the more marginal fields and maximize the nation's production. If only all nations would do this. So a big thank you to all of you for your support in this endeavor. I also want to thank our local suppliers and contractors, and of course our fellow shareholders.
From calls to place youth at the center of transformation to multi-billion-dollar commitments from industry players, the message is clear. Angola wants to position itself as a key energy hub for Africa. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Semosa at the 2025 Angola Oil and Gas Conference in Luanda, Angola.
It is exactly 12 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to Kenya, where the private sector activity contracted in the month of August, but at a slower pace than the previous month. However, performance in the manufacturing as well as the wholesale and retail sectors, while the agriculture, construction and services sectors saw reduced outputs. The Stanbic Bank Kenya Purchasing Managers Index rose to 49.4% in August, or rather 49.4 in August from 46.8 in July. And this marks a modest improvement in business activity. To break this down further for us, we joined this afternoon by Christopher Legelisho. He is an economist at Stanbic Bank in Kenya. He'll be joining us in just a short while to break down which of the sectors contributed to the sector, the PMI, and which have contributed to the contraction of the PMI figures for this particular quarter that is under review. It's exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Also, this afternoon, we'll be taking a look at Namibia and the new national airline that will be launching there. But before we go to Kenya, let's take a look back to South Africa, which celebrates Heritage Month. The spotlight is once again on how workplaces can become more inclusive and equitable. A recent leadership roundtable in Johannesburg brought together academics, business leaders, as well as youth advocates to explore diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just as a policy requirement, but rather as a driver of innovation, growth, and opportunity. Channel Africa's Lebohang Mabange has more.
The discussion underscored that diversity, equity and inclusion, or DEI, goes beyond legislation or corporate box ticking. Business futurist and trends analyst Bronwyn Williams warned that superficial approaches weaken organizations in the long run.
If businesses, if countries, if nations are approaching diversity from a box-ticking exercise perspective, from a superficial, aesthetic, accounting perspective, it is, of course, very brittle and not strategic. The real value of diversity comes from, as we call it at Flux Trends, deep or 4D diversity, where it's beyond the aesthetics and into really working with and building teams that come from different perspectives, that bring that richness, which is where the real long-term value of diversity and inclusion comes from. And that means not just hiring people that look great on the brochure, it means, of course, giving people space to speak.
Speakers highlighted that South Africa's unique context demand that transformation remains central to any DEI strategy. Keshni Govender, Head for Transformation and Strategy at Nedbank, explained how their approach must go beyond compliance.
It's an important topic in the national conversation, although we do understand that globally there has been a retraction. So I think obviously South Africa's stance is this is still a non-negotiable, and Nedbank certainly shares the same sentiment as that. While it is our problem, our responsibility, and our opportunity to then transform the entire South Africa using DEI as one of the key tools that can enable that transformation.
Governor added that transformation should empower groups often left behind, particularly women and young people.
So at Nedbank, we basically look at DEI through the lens of transformation. And we advance purpose-led transformation that really transcends legislation in order to build an equitable society. So that's really inspired by a vision of inclusive prosperity. So when one looks at DEI and inclusive prosperity, what does that actually mean? So we want our beneficiaries, like the youth as well as women, to also become leaders and drivers of transformation.
The call to action for youth was echoed by the Youth Employment Service. Chief Operating Officer Samantha Stein urged young people to diversify their networks as a way of building employability.
We encourage our youth to really use that opportunity to do a number of things that increases their employability. Number one, the network, diversity in the network. So it's quite important for us to encourage our youth to diversify that network, because don't speak to people that just look like you, come from the same background as you, etc. Really expand yourself to diversify that.
The roundtable closed with consensus that diversity, equity and inclusion is not only a moral imperative for South Africa, but also a strategic advantage. Leaders agreed that embracing difference in the workplace can build resilience, unlock innovation and chart a path towards a more inclusive future. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
It is exactly 17 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. In just a moment, a look at Kenya's PMI.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9.
Former politician and diplomat, he's the leader of the Democratic Alliance Party at one stage, and also served as South Africa's ambassador to Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay. Ambassador Tony Leon, if you were party leader now and in the GNU, what would you be pushing for?
I can speak with some direct experience because, as you might know, I was actually one of the negotiators of the GNU last year when it was formed. What I'd be pushing for is to hold the government or the president's feet to the fire on actually operationalizing the agreement that was implemented. Unfortunately, that agreement has been honored only in its breach. And I think, go back to basics and just say, okay, we're not going any further with this arrangement until we actually implement these steps.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 18 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, Kenya's private sector activity contracted in the month of August, but at a much slower pace than the previous month. However, performances in the manufacturing and wholesale and retail sectors were not too bad, while the agriculture, construction and services sectors saw reduced outputs. The Standard Bank Kenya Purchasing Managers Index rose to 49.4 in August, and this is up from 46.8 in July. It does mark a modest improvement in business activity for the country. For more on this, we joined this afternoon by Christopher Wejilisho, who is an economist at Stanbic Bank in Kenya. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me to the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. So perhaps let's take a look at the performances and the latest PMI coming out. What are the underlying factors that might explain the improvement of Kenya's PMI from July's low, that is last year's low, of 46.8 to 49.4 in August?
I would say we're seeing stability in the country. If you recall, the main drivers for why we saw declines in June and July was the fact that we had political protests in the country. And since the end of July, we've seen a bit of stability coming back to the economy, and that's quite favorable for business. Additionally, the central bank has recently been lowered the policy rate by 25 basis points to 9.5, and they have made improvements to just the risk-based pricing for credit. And so we expect that will, I think, encourage businesses to borrow from commercial banks, and that should help to stimulate growth in this economy. So the improvement for me generally speaks to the return of stability in the economy, and the hope that with lower interest rates that the private sector will begin to borrow from commercial banks, and that will help to drive growth again in the private sector. I would point, though, positively, we have seen some improvement consistently, or positive expansion in the jobs market. While we did see overall output weakening, growth, at least, or stability in the hiring market continues to be sustained, and I think that's quite positive for overall sentiment.
What we're seeing here as well is manufacturing and retail. Those sectors are outperforming sectors like construction, agriculture, and services. Why?
I would say those sectors previously were dented when we had a bit of instability during the months of June and July. So with a return to stability, you are seeing those sectors kind of benefiting from that. While the agricultural sector, I would point the decline to drier weather conditions over the last couple of months. Typically, the long rain season in Kenya begins in March and ends in May, and then you have colder weather in the months of June, July, and August. So why we're seeing that decline in agriculture, I think, generally is because of the dry weather conditions that we've seen across the country in those months.
I don't know what one can do as far as the dry weather conditions in trying to turn that sector around, but maybe let's look at interventions that could be put in place in order to turn the fate of construction and the services and maybe even agriculture. Maybe there's some innovative ways that these particular sectors can be turned around, as we see they have been lagging.
I think governments has made it one of their major commitments was that they're going to invest or encourage productivity, particularly in the agricultural sector. And what we've seen them do over the last couple of years is provide subsidized fertilizer to encourage farmers to plant more and lower the cost of for farmers in general. So that, we think, has worked. And as you rightly pointed out, there's nothing much we can do with regards to the weather. But I think cost of credit is something that is crucial with the policymakers lowering interest rates. I think that should also help to encourage at least investment. One of the reasons why we've generally seen a contraction or slowdown in the construction sector, particularly over the last 2 to 3 years, was because credit was expensive. So with lower interest rates, that should be quite favorable for the construction sector. The government as well has recently been paying pending bills towards roads contractors. We think that will also help to encourage just a return to work. One of the issues that was holding back construction was the fact that government was not paying contractors, and now we're starting to see them address that situation. We think that will drive growth in that sector.
Christopher Legilisho, thank you so much for that update on Kenya's PMI. We thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you as well. It was a pleasure for me to join you this afternoon.
Thank you. The pleasure was ours. That's Christopher Legilisho. He's an economist at Stanbic Bank in Kenya. He takes us to exactly 25 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 25 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Still coming up this afternoon, a conversation with Namibia Airline plan on actually getting an entirely new airline. You will remember that the national airline Air Namibia, which is now defunct, there were thoughts that perhaps this could be revitalized, but this does not seem to be the case. The Minister Works and Transport, Veiko Nekundi, says there is no launch date set as yet. It hasn't been announced, but the process for a new airline in Namibia is well underway, and a clearer timeline may emerge in perhaps the next month or so. Now, Air Namibia is the country's former flag carrier. That was voluntarily liquidated. It's a few years ago now. It was in March 2021, after costing Namibians $453 million in state bailouts over 3 decades. Now, if you are in South Africa or you've closely followed the fate of South African airlines and airways, this is something that perhaps you are able to relate to, a national carrier that really has been costing the state coffers and thus the taxpayer a pretty penny. But let's break this down as far as Namibia is concerned. For this conversation, we're joined by aviation analyst Phuthego Mojapele. A very good afternoon to you, Phuthego. Good to have you with us once again.
Good afternoon, Tammy, and thanks for having me.
So let's look at the state of affairs in Namibia. Why is the Namibian government opting to launch a completely new airline? There may have been, thoughts that perhaps the old Air Namibia might be revved up. If you're looking at the cost of it, wouldn't it be more cost effective just to revive the old airline instead of starting afresh?
Well, according to Companies Act, when you have wound down an entity, there is no way that the entity can be resuscitated, in a sense that with the kind of resources it would require for it to be resuscitated, it would basically be you'll be reversing your fortunes by doing that. So I think what they have done, they've calculated their fortunes and they have realized that this is the best option that they can opt for, to set up a complete new company. The company currently is really owing quite substantial the amount of people or companies that they have. When it went to liquidation, there were a number of people, including South African Airways Technical. There are some of their old planes that are still in our hangars here in South Africa, still stuck there because they haven't been paid, and they still sitting there. So ideally, when you want to start something like this, it's always good to start from scratch, because you're not owing anybody. No one would come to you and ask for any opportunity of trying to get the money out of you. So that's why you see they went and opt for a complete new entity, which is what they are going to be naming in the new distant future. However, one of the things, I just want to clarify something here. The decision of Namibian government to liquidate the company was slightly because the management of the company at the time had completely collapsed, and there was nothing to salvage. If they were going to try and salvage the company at the time, it would have cost them quite a lot, and there was no turning point. They were owing Lufthansa, they were owing almost everybody in the market, and the board of directors was dysfunctional. Executive was not in place, and it was COVID time at that time. So it was it was in a mess more than what we could be.
So I wonder what is going to happen to the debt that Air Namibia still owes some of its service providers. You've listed some of them.
Air Namibia has been liquidated. So liquidation, it takes place. There's no way that TAMI can launch a new entity in a complete different name, in a complete different... the name might be the same, but it's not the same company. So you can't come and claim money from me. You need to direct your your request to the liquidator. The liquidator should be the one who's answering those questions. But in this case, there is nobody who's going to be coming to this new entity. It's a complete nobody can claim anything from it.
So why is it important for nations to see the need to own a national carrier? It's quite evident that they are unable to manage them in some instances. I mean, the Air Namibia is one such case.
Airlines in nature of countries are identity and the pride of the nation. Remember, you ordinarily when you have an airline that is operating in your country, it doesn't necessarily that it's going to be operating in your country. It's got its own diplomatic ways of connecting with other countries. So that's generally how the airlines get established around the world. However, you also want to make sure that your presence is within, and also you are attracting business back into the country. So the more your presence is available in other countries, the better. Yes, you are quite right that there's no, in some countries like United States and others, there is no what we call a national carrier, but those companies that are operating in the country, they still carry the flag of the country. Like your American Airlines, they do have the colors of the United States. That doesn't mean that they are owned by United States. You look at the BA, British Airways is not a national carrier of British. It's owned by another company. So it is on those bases that they can formulate a new company completely with different shareholding. Some of the people that, or companies or entities that buy shares into that company may not necessarily be the government. I think they have done homework, and I do believe that the direction in which they are taking will at least free up government for now for interference and any other things, and the airline will run as a business but not as one of the government departments.
And we'll look forward to the announcement of those timelines. Putego Mojapele, thank you so much for that update this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. That's aviation analyst Putego Mojapele. He takes us to exactly 32 minutes after 4 p.m. Let's head over now to the markets desk where Chanduko Ligege is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Tommy. Good afternoon. $1 is trading at 17 Rand 67 in South Africa, in Botswana 13 Pula 31, Namibia 17 Namibian dollars 67, Zambia 23 Kwacha 65 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 45, Ethiopia 142 birr 26, Uganda 3,000 shilling 523, Tanzania 2,000 shilling 491. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 530. Egypt, the dollar is 48 Egyptian pound 49. Tunisia, 2 dinar 90. Algeria, 129 dinar 8. In Morocco, 8 dirham 93. Angola, the dollar is 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is 2,845. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,551, platinum at $1,426 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil $68.14 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. A adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Tivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
It is exactly 4:36 Central African Time. Let's head over to the sports desk where Mutsibudi Makura is standing by with the latest from the business of sport.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Tammy. A very good afternoon from the sports desk. We'll start here. Minimum salaries for players in the top tiers of professional women's football in England are being introduced for the first time this season. It is one of the requirements brought in by the Women's Super League Football, the company overseeing England's professional league fixtures. So the WSL Football would not disclose that a minimum level will be, but also described it as a full-time wage. It is expected that the salary range will then be made public when the updated Women's Super League as well as the Women's Super League 2 regulations are published later on the season. So the salaries will be based on thresholds such as age of the players, what league they're playing in, as well as the experience in the game following consultation with the professional footballers associations. On top of the minimum salary requirements, clubs must then meet increased criteria around high performance environments. It also comes just after the multi-year partnership was agreed between the Women's Soccer League Football as well as Nike. Now, part of that agreement will see the apparel provide football boots as well as goalkeeper gloves to all the players in the Women's Super League as well as the Women's Super League 2 who do not have any endorsement deals. Back home now, the South African Rugby Union has become the 6th shareholder of the United Rugby Championship. Now, SA Rugby joins the Irish, Italian, Scottish as well as Welsh rugby unions along with the CVC Capital Partners as shareholders in Pro Rugby Championship DAC, the company that operates the league. Now, SA Rugby's relationship with the competition dates back as far as 2018 when the Cheetahs as well as the Southern Kings joined the Pro 14. In 2021, the launch of the URC introduced the Lions, the Stormers, the Sharks as well as the Bulls, and since then, the URC has achieved significant growth across broadcast audiences, digital engagement, as well as match attendances, with SA Rugby and its teams now playing a pivotal role in the success of the United Rugby Championship. On to tennis news now. Tennis legend Roger Federer has become only the 7th athlete in history to reach billionaire status. That's according to Forbes magazine. The 20-time Grand Slam champion who retired back in 2022 is now estimated to have a net worth of $1.1 billion, boosted by his minority stake in Swiss shoe as well as apparel brand On. Now, Federer is now the second ever tennis player in history to join the billionaire club after Romanian player Ion Teric, the 1970 French Open doubles champion who built his fortune through post-consumerism investments. Now, overall, in the 7th athlete, Roger Federer, is the 7th athlete in the world to become a billionaire. He joins the likes of basketball stars Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, as well as LeBron James, as well as the Milwaukee Bucks' 6th man, that is Junior Bridgman, as well as the golf icon Tiger Woods, are the others on the list. Woods as well as James are the only players who are still competing in their respective sports. Back home now, South African athletics coach Thabo Matibedi has revealed that his athletes have funded his trip to Italy to assist them ahead of the World Championships. So the World Championships are taking place in Japan from the 13th to the 27th of September, and their coach will be nearby to sort of guide with their preparations. The coach also revealing that even at home, his athletes step in to fund his travel costs for local competitions. Matibedi also expressed the deep admiration for his athletes' sacrifices, also highlighting just how their support strengthens their relationship beyond the track.
So there was a lot of sacrifice that those boys they have done that people they don't know about it. People they don't know about that. Those boys they make a good sacrifice. We went to the championships. We went to Potchefstroom from Pretoria on Tuesday. It's only 2 hours drive from Pretoria, but we left on Tuesday. We got a DNB there, so we can settle, and then everybody's mind is clear. No one comes to me to training. 4 of us are in the same place. We know whereabouts of each other. We there together. We eat together. We dine together. We go to lunch together.
Right, so that concludes your Sports News Asawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. More sporting updates tomorrow morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Tami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa. It's gone exactly 4:42 Central African Time. The inaugural Vision 2040 Indaba is set to open this afternoon in the Gqeberha city of South Africa's Eastern Cape province. Vision 2040 is a bold strategy that advocates for a people-centered, conservation-driven agenda that will enable collaborative thrivability between biodiversity conservation, social justice and economic empowerment. Organised by the South African National Parks, SANParks, the event has brought stakeholders in the conservation sector to foster meaningful dialogue and forge collaborative actions that will advance the implementation of Vision 2040. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Pam Yako, chairperson of the South African National Parks. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Afternoon, Tammy. Good to have me. Thank you.
So what exactly is Vision 2040 and what does this plan mean for South Africa?
As you indicated, Vision 2040 is a bold and courageous vision or plan, which we adopted last year, actually, after extensive consultation. You would know that South Africa is endowed with biodiversity, as well as its rich heritage, cultural heritage. So what Vision 20 says is that how do we make sure that we harness what we own and what we have and maximize beneficiation so that we can address some of the societal challenges, whether they're inequality, jobs and or unemployment, as well as just assisting small businesses, particularly in rural areas where most of our national parks are based.
And can you take us through some of the stakeholders that you're working with on this vision?
We have quite a wide range of stakeholders. Firstly, which I think for me is very important, is community leaders, people that live in and around the national parks. We have small businesses that have actually, we've got an exhibition at the Indaba. We have just been, and there's the people that are doing all sorts of things, ranging to be used for giving people for giving people in tourism establishments to education initiatives. Then we've got funding communities. We have own private reserves. We've got other conservation agencies in the country. We've got traditional leaders, traditional healers. They're all here, and they're pledging their part and contributing towards this greater vision.
It really is a number of stakeholders and very diverse as well. Can you take us through some of the challenges that you are foreseeing or that you may have already faced in ensuring that there is actually genuine collaboration between the relevant stakeholders? Ultimately, you want to ensure that there's a thriving sector that benefits all the parties, but sometimes you might find that you actually have parties with very, conflicting or differing objectives.
Yes. I mean, I think the biggest one is the translation of the vision into reality. Because the reality of the South African situation is that people are saying, not another vision. When are we going to see tangible change? And there's an urgency to try and get things, tangible benefits. At the same time, there is also a conversation about the how, right? How much do you open up parks, and how much do you leave some of these areas in a pristine way? And also, the panic, which I think it is justified, if you ask me, about the need for jobs and creating the employment opportunities. But then the tension also comes in, how many people can you absorb in the system? Because on the one hand, because of its visionary nature, it can also raise expectations. So I think the biggest challenge that we face is how are we gonna translate this so that it becomes a reality, and then people don't feel like, well, that's another plan, nothing came out of it. And I think for me, that's what keeps me awake at night.
Do you think that you'll be able to achieve the deadline that's been set, 2040?
Yes. With collaboration and commitment from a whole lot of people, we do have already a commitment for the next years from the next 6 years from the Global Environmental Fund that has given us 240 million. SANParks itself money, so we're talking about doubling that amount. There are other potential partners. Some of them are going to give us in-kind support, like, for example, we have the CAFCITA here, which is a skills organization. They are here to also lend their hand. And we've got organizations like Sanlam who are supporting with funding entrepreneurs in the rural areas. I think that, Tammy, if I were to say that we'll achieve everything, I don't know, but we all live in hope. And as they say, if you don't dream, if your dream is not big enough, you will then fall short. So let's dream big and let's deliver, and let's change the rural landscape and integrate our national parks within that.
And continue to live in hope. Ms. Pam Yako, we thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. She is the chairperson of the South African National Parks. A very bold vision, Vision 2040, takes us to exactly 4:49.
Ahoy, matey.
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa One. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa One. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 10 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to agriculture, which contributes nearly 30% to Africa's GDP, yet only 6% of commercial bank lending flows into this particular sector. This leaves millions of emerging farmers caught in the quote-unquote missing middle, too advanced for microfinance but not yet eligible for commercial credit. The real barrier isn't just collateral, but it really is the absence of verified records, its cash flow histories, as well as financial track records that banks require. To help unpack this further for us this afternoon, we're joined by Dr. Langa Simela, Business Development Manager at Absa Agribusiness. Doctor, welcome to African Business. Good to have you with us today.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for having me over, and thanks to you and your listeners.
When we look at these figures, Doc, I mean, you see that agriculture really has a really huge contribution to Africa's economy, yet it still receives so little commercial bank lending. Why is that?
So I must just start with a disclaimer that us as Absa Agri, we are a very big lender to the agricultural sector. But to the point you made earlier on, yes, the developing sector still remains a challenge. And the first one is the jockey themselves. Some of them have been farming for a number of years. They've used their salaries, their pensions, or even income from other businesses to support their agribusinesses. But what they don't do correctly is to keep substantive information or records with which to apply for credit from a commercial bank or other commercial entities. So when they come to banks and other lenders, there is inadequate information to make a credit decision with. And linked to that, in instances you have insecure land tenure, access to water that cannot be verified, and limited access to markets, weak logistics, and all those things. All those things combined make it difficult then to actually make a credit decision to support these farmers.
And I think that answer ties into somewhat my next question. If you could maybe just clarify for us, what exactly is that missing middle, and why are so many agripreneurs trapped there?
Yeah, so that missing middle is that person or that farmer entrepreneur who's now trying to move from microfinance or self-funding and borrow money in order to scale up. And while they're trapped, it is that information gap that I'm talking about, that they're not able to put together a credit-worthy application where you can look at it and say, okay, this is in place, that's in place. This person can definitely borrow whatever he needs. Let's say he's planting maize and is in an area that produces 7 tons per hectare. He can definitely say, I can do the 7 tons per hectare. I can generate the money, be able to make profits, and also pay back whatever I've borrowed to put into that. So that's a gap that needs to be addressed, to be able to assist them, to be able to put in that, collate all the information that they need in order to be able to put in a credit-worthy application.
Collateral also, how much of a role does that play in being a barrier?
It is one of them, but I wouldn't say it is the primary one. As I've already said, the primary one is the financial literacy, the weak record keeping, the inability to demonstrate compliance, for instance, paying your taxes. That's one of the things we would require of you as a bank. So the collateral, what it does, it says, if we lend to you and something goes wrong, what do we fall back on? So it really comes in when the decision has been made that, okay, this business makes sense, it's viable, it's going to grow. If you put money into it, it will grow, enable it to grow, and it will be able to pay back. But should all the risks that could happen, one of them not be taken care of, what then does the bank fall back on? So that's the role of collateral, really. It's not the major, or at least it's not the foremost consideration.
Right.
And the thing is, in the market,
everything. It comes in after it's actually been approved. But in the time that we've got, could you take us through and perhaps unpack the tiered finance pathways and how these tiered finance pathways work in a really practical way on the ground.
So this is something that we feel the industry should drive, and we're sort of trying to help to drive that as well. I always liken it to school. You have a foundational phase where you're really developing, starting up, learning the basics. That is normally, as I said, self-funded or funded by grants. So the returns there are uncertain, but there's a lot of capacity building, skills development, and just ready to grow. And when the entrepreneur or the farmer has demonstrated that they're able to do the basics, then you can go into concessional lending. Concessional lending, now it's soft loans with easy payment terms, grace periods, and can easily be written off should there be a need to. And this can be then paired up with technical assistance, blended grants, so where you can do half loan, half grant, and subsidized insurance, and as I said, credit guarantees. At this phase, really, you're nurturing the agripreneur to grow and build credit readiness and just improve the discipline of managing their business. Once they've grown and they demonstrate the capacity that they can manage all the risks associated with their business, they are compliant with all the legislation that is they need to comply to, the business is viable, then they can go to commercial lending. And as you say, from a practical perspective, I always liken it to school. You start off at nursery, and then when you've demonstrated certain capabilities at nursery, you graduate to primary, to secondary, and ultimately tertiary education. So you're not thrown in the deep end into tertiary education without all the preparation that goes there. So that's really the progressive financing pathway that I think we should build on. Start with the grant, going to concessional, and ultimately to commercial lending.
And we'll leave it at that for this afternoon, Dr. Langa Simela. Certainly a lot to unpack as far as agriculture is concerned, and as you so aptly highlighted, the various options that are available for farmers, and that all-important prerequisite of making sure that the records are there in order for them to even qualify and be creditworthy for the applications. We thank you for your time, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Tammy.
It's been a pleasure. That's Dr. Langa Simela. She's the Business Development Manager at Absa Agribusiness. Taking us to exactly 3 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Bonjour to you, Joël.
Bonjour, Tammy. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Vue d'Afrique, c'est tout à l'heure et on parlera des réactions contrastées en République démocratique du Congo après la condamnation de Constant Mutamba. On parlera également de la Guinée. La campagne électorale pour le référendum constitutionnel du 21 septembre bat son plein. Et aussi de la Centrafrique où le gouvernement et opposition se sont rencontrés mardi lors d'une réunion qui marque le lancement des travaux préparatoires à la tenue d'un dialogue national. Merci Tammy.
Merci beaucoup, Joël. That's Joël coming up with Vue d'Afrique as the French desk takes over from 5 p.m. Well, that is it for the Wednesday edition of Africa in Business on Channel Africa from myself and the entire team. Our producer, Mabu Buloka, technical producer, Nanda Koza, on social media, Talent Butelezi. On the news desk, Matapelo Mahape, economics desk, Chanduko Ligege, and with the business of sport, Musibudi Makura. I'm Tami Ngubeni. This has been Africa in Business on Channel Africa. Over now to the French desk for Vue d'Afrique.